Recently, I took a trip back to Kansas City, another road trip, to help out my family. It's a long story and I don't want to bore you with all the details, but suffice it to say, I did have to deal with some anxiety triggers along the way, and I thought I'd talk about that today a bit. So if you want to come along for the ride, stay tuned. Hello there. My name is Dee, and this is Easing Anxiety. If you like what we do, please subscribe and click on the notifications button so you can be alerted when new videos are available. Thanks for joining us. Yes, this is actually my drive from Broomfield, Colorado to Lenexa, Kansas. It's about a 9 to 10 hour drive depending on making stops along the way. I left early in the morning, as I often do, because I wake up early, and so I hit the road. This is the actual footage from the drive out there. I picked up a GoPro camera at Christmas and decided to test it out on this trip. I'm still trying out different things and learning how to use it, so some of the footage here will be okay and some might be a little iffy, but I thought it was a good test. It's always a mix of emotions when I head back to Kansas City. My family is great, and I love them. I love them very much. But also, it was the original trigger for a lot of my anxieties, and one of the things that first led me to taking anti-anxiety medication. Not meditation, but medication. So I actually kind of enjoy the long drive on my way out there because it's a time for me to collect myself, kind of recenter myself, and prepare for complications. I think that's the best way to put it, for complications. It wasn't long before the sun was fully up and we could enjoy the drive. For a while it was kind of in my eyesight, but then some light clouds started to come in and created a really interesting canopy along the way. At first, these really thin ones came through, and then some thicker ones, and then there were spotty areas of blue sky peeking through now and then. It was almost surreal, as you can see here on the video. Eventually, this even led to a little bit of rain and a touch of snow, as you'll see here on the video, but at first I was just enjoying the beauty of the sky and the country around me. This is Kansas, for those of you who haven't driven across the state. Kansas is pretty flat. Not a lot of trees, not a lot of hills, some hills here and there, but mostly flat. And a lot of farmland, grasslands. But it's also a peaceful drive. One of the nice things about driving between Denver and Kansas City is that there's no major cities in between. Few small towns, but that's it. So no rush hour to contend with. No delays of that type whatsoever. My parents still live in their house back in Kansas City. My father has had Alzheimer's for many years and it's starting to progress quite rapidly and getting to where he can't take care of himself and doesn't remember things and doesn't remember all of his children and grandchildren. So it's getting to be difficult. My mom's been his caretaker for many years and still is, but she also is facing a lot of health problems. And the situation has been deteriorating rapidly, so when things go south, I pop in the car and I drive back for a week and see what I can do to help. We'd like to get them into a facility where they could be better taken care of, but my mom has a very strong independent streak and wants to retain that independence as long as possible. As you can see here, we started to get into some of the rain and some of the snow. It didn't really affect the conditions on the road too much, and it passed after a while. It was kind of nice just having the variety. It does look like I'm driving really fast here. I'm sure you've noticed that. But please know that this is sped up 15 times normal speed, so I am driving pretty much in the speed limit range. I usually just put my car on cruise, drive in a reasonable rate, and that way I don't have to worry about it, so I'm pretty safe. I also made sure that I got exercise on this trip, something else that I think we often forget when we become overstressed and overanxious. I jogged a little bit, but mostly I took long walks. Mostly in the morning, but sometimes in the evening too. I didn't know this, but most places that I stay, even at hotels, I usually can find trails somewhere or sidewalks or neighborhoods to walk through. Luckily, at this hotel that I was staying at was a motel south of Kansas City, and about 2 blocks behind it was a trail system behind a housing subdivision and through a lot of wooded area. And I would walk that almost every day, and that helped. That helped me create a little bit of cushion, might be the word, between the chaos that can be my family sometimes and my need for peace, my need for some quiet time. I found that sometimes in my hotel room at night too, and that's one of the reasons I get a hotel, is so I have that boundary, that separateness. I don't get that if I stay with my family, and it is something that I started to do during my withdrawal from benzodiazepines because I had to create that. I had to create that boundary to take care of myself. And sometimes we have to do that. But as much as those boundaries are there, this trip was also about pushing myself and getting back out there and realizing that, hey, I can still take on issues and I can help out people the best I can. So I'm actually getting closer. This looks like right here where I'm pulling off at Junction City, Kansas at a little gas station. I stopped off there, filled up the car, hit the bathroom because it's good to do both at the same time. Well, not at the same time, but at the same spot. And you can see all the cars coming and going. I think that's kind of fun. Junction City is only a couple hours from Kansas City, so I'm getting pretty close to being home here. For those of you who have never been to Kansas City, especially the area where I live, but all of Kansas City, it's actually a lot of rolling hills and a lot of trees. I think many people picture it as being like this, as being a flat plain, for the most part, but that's Kansas. Once you get closer to Kansas City, the terrain changes and it's really quite beautiful. I miss it when I'm gone. I really miss the big trees. But about the anxiety, and there were so many triggers on this. Traveling is a trigger for anxiety for me sometimes. I love to travel and I will still do it. And I'm not going to let that anxiety stop me. But I have a lot of anxiety when I travel. I talk about bathrooms. I know some people don't like talking about that, but for me, I'm honest. Because of my benzodiazepine withdrawal and protracted symptoms and everything else, I have pelvic floor dysfunction, which aggravates my urinary system, which means I, especially when I'm anxious or stressed, have to use the restroom more often. And, of course, I also have digestive issues sometimes, but I've always had those. Those got worse during my withdrawal, but I've had that my whole life. I have an anxious stomach. I was born with that. And anxiety severely affects my stomach to the point where if I get too anxious, I may have to make a run for the restroom. Those things complicate traveling. If I hear there's a 2-hour tour, not the 2-hour tour that Gilligan went on. Yes, I'm dating myself. But like a 2-hour tour through a famous building or something, or anything that's part of these attractions you want to go do, I have to think ahead about the placement of restrooms. And I do that on road trips like this too. I have to kind of plan ahead to know where those are. It's become such a habit that I don't always know if I'm doing it. But it is a stressor for me, and it's one that adds to my anxiety about traveling. If you look now, we are just going through Topeka, Kansas. That is the capital of Kansas. We just drove through Topeka. That was quick. Hope you saw it go by. I'm sure you never saw the Capitol building, but that was Topeka, Kansas. Right here, we're getting off the turnpike. And I'm jumping onto a highway just on the western side of Kansas City, outskirts. That'll take me down to a trail that I often like to hike. right here, I came upon a semi-tractor trailer truck that was on fire still on the left side of the road. Don't know if you can see it because of the angle of the camera. Maybe I can pause that and show it a little bit better to you when I do the edit. But I was surprised. I saw the smoke billowing out from the semi, but I didn't notice until we got close to it that there was still fire underneath the cab just coming out crazy. It was crazy to see. Anyway, what I was trying to say is that I often get in town, usually by about 3 or so in the afternoon. And because I've been in the car for so long and I'm still kind of creating some space, I go and find a hiking trail and I do a little bit of hiking. And that's what I did this time. This is me turning off and actually taking the wrong turn where I thought the trail was down. And you can see me pause here wondering, okay, what did I do wrong? And then I'll finally get back on the road and I'll go back down. I'll go down to one more street and I'll turn. So yes, that is my directions not quite working very well. But there's this little trail that's near Lake Lenexa. Lenexa is my hometown. For the time I lived in Kansas City, pull in here and I go hiking. This is the boardwalk at the lake that I sometimes walk around. It's really peaceful and quiet. As you can tell, there's not a lot going on here. Kind of nice. I grew up in an environment of negative thinking, and I learned well how to do that. And that led to anxiety and depression and a lot of counseling, and eventually to psychiatric medication. Now I'm slowly crawling out of that hole and finding new ways to process the events of my day. To see them not as another layer of negativity on top of me, but instead as an opportunity to grow, to learn, and to find the blessings in that same event. It's an uphill battle for sure, but all uphill battles do lead somewhere. We just gotta stay with it. I'm not gonna whitewash all the negative events, and I need to process them. Bad things happen to people, and we have to deal with that. But if we only focus on the bad things, then that's all we'll ever see. Going for these hikes, getting outside, enjoying some time talking with you, shooting some of these videos. This was me making the most out of the time that I was in Kansas City. And it helped. Well, that was a little different. I hope you liked it. I'll admit, I'm pretty brain fried. And so coming up with unique content this past couple of weeks was difficult. So I think the best I could do at this time was just to put together some thoughts that I had from the road and share them with you. And I hope it helped. It's hard right now for a lot of us. Those of us who struggle with anxiety. These are difficult times for so many reasons. We've talked about that before on the channel. But we get through. Each day is a new day. Each day we find something to get us through, something to help us manage our fear, something to get us back out there and try to trust the world again. Try to find that desire to explore the world again. Try to realize that many of our fears are irrational. And I know most of us know that, but it's hard to accept that and make that a habit. To see these fears that we get as irrational, process them, and let them pass. That's hard. I think that's it for this one. It's probably gone on way too long with all the footage of the driving and other thoughts that I've had along the way, but I am grateful for you. I'm grateful everyone who watches these videos and finds them helpful in the smallest way, however that is. I am grateful for you, and thank you for that. Be at peace, and I'll see you next time.